The champagne flute didn't shatter when I set it down, but the silence that followed my father's announcement was sharp enough to cut glass. It was a heavy silence, the kind that sucks the air out of a room and leaves you gasping. I looked around the mahogany table of my parents' dining room. The room was familiar. I had grown up in this house, played hide and seek under this very table. But tonight, it felt like a courtroom, and I was the defendant. I looked at my mother, Joyce. She was meticulously cutting her steak, refusing to meet my eyes. She wore the diamond tennis bracelet I had bought her for her 60th birthday last year. It had cost me a month's salary, but I wanted to show them I had made it, that I was a good daughter. I looked at my sister, Sarah. She was 29, 4 years younger than me, and radiant. She sat at my father's right hand, feigning a look of surprised humility, her hand resting gently on her chest. But I knew Sarah. I knew that look. It wasn't surprise. It was the suppression of a victory scream. "It's just business, Elena," my father, Robert, said. He picked up the bottle of vintage Cabernet, another gift from me, and poured a generous amount into Sarah's glass. "You have to understand the optics." "Optics?" I repeated. My voice sounded strange to my own ears, hollow, distant. "Dad, I built Nexus. I wrote the kernel code in your basement while wearing 2 pairs of socks because we couldn't afford heating. I secured the Series A funding. I hired every single one of the first 50 employees." "And you did a marvelous job, sweetie," Mom chimed in, finally looking up. Her smile was tight, practiced. "But the company isn't in a basement anymore. It's a global enterprise. It needs polish." "And I don't have polish?" I asked, gripping the edge of the table. "You have intensity," Sarah said softly. Her voice was like syrup, sweet, thick, and cloying. "You're a builder, Elle. You love the code. You love the grime. But Nexus is about to IPO. The investors, they want a face they can relate to. Someone with the Wharton pedigree." She tapped her fingernail against the crystal glass. Clink, clink. "They want me to step down," I said, the reality finally settling in my chest like a lead weight. "From my own company." "Transition," Dad corrected. "We want you to transition to a technical advisory role. Sarah will take the CEO chair effective next month." I felt the blood drain from my face. My heart hammered against my ribs, a frantic bird trapped in a cage. They weren't asking. They were telling. Between Dad's initial angel investment shares and the shares I had foolishly gifted Mom and Sarah over the years for tax purposes, they held 51% of the voting stock. I had given them the knife, and now they were holding it against my throat. "I see," I whispered. "Don't be dramatic, Elena," Mom sighed, signaling the maid to clear the plates. "This is a celebration. Sarah is finally coming into her own. You should be proud. We're keeping the legacy in the family." I looked at Sarah. She smiled, a small, triumphant curvature of her lips that only I could see. "To the future," Sarah said, raising her glass. I didn't raise mine. I watched the bubbles rise in the golden liquid and realized for the first time in my life that I didn't have a family. I had a board of directors, and I had just been outvoted. To understand why that dinner destroyed me, you have to understand what Nexus cost me. 10 years ago, I was 23. I had a degree in computer science from a state school, not the Ivy League prestige my parents worshipped, and an idea. The idea was simple: an AI-driven logistical platform that could predict supply chain disruptions before they happened. I called it Nexus. My parents were skeptical. "Why don't you get a job at Google?" Dad asked. "It's safe, good benefits." "I want to build something," I told him. He gave me a small loan, $20,000. He made me sign a promissory note with interest. "Business is business," he said. I didn't mind it. I respected it. I thought he was teaching me responsibility. I moved back home to save on rent. I took over the garage. It was freezing in the winter and a sauna in the summer. I spent 18 hours a day in that concrete box. I remember the smell of stale coffee and soldering iron. I remember the panic attacks when the server crashed at 3 a.m. I remember missing my best friend's wedding because we had a critical patch deployment. My fiancé, Mark, left me because he said he felt like he was dating a ghost. "You're not here, Elena," Hetty said, packing his bags. He was right. I sacrificed everything for Nexus. Slowly, it started to work. I got a small contract with a local shipping firm, then a regional trucking company. Then the breakthrough, a pilot program with a national retailer. I paid Dad back his $20,000 within 2 years. By year 5, we moved into a real office in downtown San Francisco. By year 7, we were valued at $50 million. By year 9, we were nearing the unicorn status, a $1 billion valuation. Throughout it all, my parents were happy to attend the galas. They loved telling their country club friends that their daughter was a CEO. But they never asked about the work. They never asked about the sleepless nights. And Sarah? Well, Sarah was finding herself. While I was debugging code, Sarah was backpacking through Thailand. While I was negotiating with aggressive venture capitalists, Sarah was dropping out of her first master's program because it was too rigid. She was the golden child, beautiful, charismatic, effortless. Things just worked out for Sarah. If she overspent her allowance, Dad topped it up. If she crashed her car, Mom bought her a safer one. I didn't resent her, not really. I loved her. She was my baby sister. I thought we were just different. I was the horsework. She was the show pony. I didn't realize the show pony wanted to run the farm. The beginning of the end started 14 months before the dinner. I was in my office, a corner suite with a view of the Bay Bridge, reviewing the Q3 projections. My assistant buzzed me. "Your parents are here, Elena, and Sarah." I frowned. It was 10 a.m. on a Tuesday. "Send them in." They walked in like they owned the place. To be fair, Dad acted like he owned every room he walked into. Sarah was beaming, holding a freshly printed diploma in a leather casing. "She did it!" Mom squealed, hugging Sarah. "MBA from Wharton, top of her class." "Well, top 10%, Sarah corrected modestly, flashing a perfect smile. "That's amazing, Sarah," I said, genuinely happy for her. "Congratulations." "So, Dad," said Dad, sitting down in one of the guest chairs, without being asked, "now that she's credentialed, we need to talk about her role." I paused. "Her role?" "At Nexus," Dad said. "She's ready to join the family business." I hesitated. Nexus wasn't a family business in the traditional sense. It was a high-tech meritocracy. We hired the best engineers from MIT, Stanford, and Caltech. We didn't do handouts. "Dad," I started carefully, "we have a hiring process. If Sarah wants to apply for a position in marketing or HR, I can—" "Apply?" Mom scoffed. "Elena, she's your sister. She has an Ivy League MBA. She shouldn't have to apply like some stranger." "I don't want a handout, Elle," Sarah said, stepping forward. She looked earnest. "I want to help. I've been studying your business model. I think I can bring a fresh perspective. You're so focused on the tech, which is great, but the brand, it's a little cold. I can warm it up." I looked at her. She was smart. I couldn't deny that. And frankly, I was lonely at the top. The idea of having someone I trusted, someone of my own blood by my side, was appealing. "Okay," I said. "It was the biggest mistake of my life. We can create a role. VP of Strategy?" "Perfect," Sarah said. She walked around the desk and hugged me. "We're going to kill it, Elle. Sisters taking over the world." I hugged her back. I didn't see the wolf in sheep's clothing. I just saw my little sister. The first few months were deceptively smooth. Sarah was charming. She won over the sales team instantly. She organized happy hours, remembered everyone's birthdays, and brought a social energy to the office that we had been lacking. "Your sister is awesome," Dave told me one day. "She really knows how to talk to clients. She smoothed over that issue with the logistics account just by taking them to dinner." I felt a pang of pride. She's a natural. But then the boundaries started to blur. It started with small things. I'd walk into a meeting to find Sarah already leading it. "Oh, Elena, I just started without you. I knew you were busy with the server migration, and this is just high-level branding stuff. Didn't want to bore you." "I should be in the branding meeting, Sarah," I'd say, trying to keep my voice neutral in front of the staff. "Of course! Pull up a chair." She made me feel like a guest in my own conference room. Then she started hiring people without my approval. Consultant, who were her old business school friends. They walked around the office in expensive suits, using buzzwords like synergy and paradigm shift, annoying my engineers. When I confronted her, she went to Mom and Dad. "Elena is micromanaging me. She doesn't trust me. She's treating me like an intern." Then my phone would ring. "Elena," Dad's voice would boom, "let your sister work. You're too rigid. You need to learn to delegate. That's what a good CEO does." "I delegate to competent people, Dad. Sarah's hiring her drinking buddies." "She is building a network. You could learn a thing or two from her social skills." The gaslighting was subtle, but constant. They made me feel like the crazy one, like the jealous older sister who couldn't handle the shiny new MBA. The turning point came 6 months in. We were pitching to Orion, a massive government contractor. It was a $50 million contract. I had spent weeks preparing the technical specs. The morning of the pitch, Sarah walked into my office. "I'm taking the lead on the Orion pitch," she announced. I looked up from my laptop. "Excuse me? This is a technical integration. They need to know about the API security protocols. You don't know the first thing about our encryption." "They don't care about encryption, Elle," she said dismissively. "They care about the relationship. The lead guy at Orion, he's an alum of Wharton. We have mutual friends. If you go in there talking about code, you'll bore him to death. If I go in there, we bond, we drink scotch, we sign the deal." "No," I said firmly. "I built this tech. I sell it." She didn't argue. She just smiled that tight little smile. 2 hours later, Dad called. "Let Sarah take the pitch, Elena." "Dad, stay out of this. I'm the chairman of the board. I'm telling you, let her take the pitch. It's a test. If she fails, she fails. But you have to give her the chance." I ground my teeth so hard I thought they would crack. "Fine." Sarah took the pitch. She took 3 of her consultants with her. They came back 4 hours later, popping champagne. "We got it!" Sarah screamed, popping a cork in the middle of the open plan office. The sales team cheered. I came out of my office, forcing a smile. "Congratulations!" "Did they ask about the security protocols?" "Oh, who cares?" She laughed, waving a glass. "We signed the letter of intent. We're rich, baby." Everyone cheered for Sarah, the savior, the rainmaker. I went back into my office and closed the door. I pulled up the letter of intent she had uploaded to the server. I read through it. My stomach dropped. In her eagerness to close the deal, Sarah had agreed to a pricing structure that was 20% below our operating cost. She had also promised a delivery timeline of 3 months. The integration required 6 months minimum. She hadn't just signed a deal, she had signed a death warrant for our profit margins and our engineering team's sanity. I marched into her office. "Did you read the terms?" "Of course," she said, sipping her champagne. "You undercut us by 20%. We lose money on this deal, Sarah. In 3 months, the engineers will have to work 100-hour weeks." "Elena, you're always so negative. It's a loss leader."
We get the government logo on our website, and that brings in other clients. And the engineers? That's what we pay them for. Crunch time. They are people, Sarah, not robots. They are resources, she corrected. And I just secured the biggest resource of all. You should be thanking me. I realized then that she didn't care about the company. She cared about the glory of the company. She wanted the magazine covers. She didn't care about the foundation. But I couldn't fire her. My parents wouldn't let me. So I started watching and waiting.
The fallout from the Orion contract, the deal Sarah had signed with a smile and a glass of champagne, hit us like a freight train. The terms she agreed to were impossible. A 3-month delivery window for a complex government integration that required high-level security clearance and custom API architecture. It was a 6-month job, minimum. I called an emergency all-hands meeting in the war room, our glass-walled conference center. We have to do this, I told the team. I looked at the faces of my engineers. These weren't just employees to me. There was Marcus, my CTO, who had turned down offers from Facebook because he believed in my vision. There was Jenna, the lead UI designer, a single mom who I allowed to work flexible hours. There was Kevin, a junior dev who I was mentoring. They looked tired. Sarah promised them a Q3 launch, Marcus said, rubbing his temples. He was wearing the same hoodie he'd worn yesterday. I suspected he hadn't gone home. Elena, the codebase can't handle the load she sold them. We have to rewrite the entire backend in 12 weeks. I know, I said softly. I know it's unfair. But if we default on this contract, the penalties will bankrupt us. We have to push through. I'll be here with you every night. We order food, we rotate sleeping shifts in the nap pods. I'm doubling overtime pay for everyone. Budget didn't approve overtime, Marcus muttered. I'm approving it, I snapped. I'll pay it out of my own pocket if I have to. While we were grinding, Sarah was branding. She hired an interior design firm to revamp the lobby. It needs more feng shui, she told me as I walked past her, holding a stack of server logs and looking like a zombie. Sarah, I said, stopping, we are burning cash on overtime. We can't afford a $50,000 lobby renovation. It's about image, Elena, she said, checking her reflection in a new mirror she'd just had installed. When Orion comes for the site visit, do you want them to see a tech dungeon or a Silicon Valley powerhouse? I want them to see a working product, I shouted. Heads turned. It was the first time I had raised my voice in the office. Sarah's eyes went wide, feigning shock. Wow, okay. Someone needs a spa day. You're becoming toxic, Elle. The team can sense your stress. It's bad leadership. She walked away, her heels clicking on the polished concrete, leaving me standing there shaking with rage. That night at 2 a.m., I found Marcus sleeping under his desk. I woke him up. Go home, Marcus, I whispered. Can't, he mumbled, wiping drool from his face. If I don't patch this kernel, the Orion demo crashes. Why are you doing this? I asked him. Why do you stay? He looked at me, his eyes bloodshot. Because of you, boss. We know Sarah is a suit. We know she's clueless. We're doing this for you. Don't let us down. That broke my heart more than the betrayal ever could. They were loyal to me, and I was failing to protect them. Chapter 6. The Whisper Network. We delivered the Orion project, barely. It was a miracle of caffeine and code. We hit the deadline by 4 hours. The product was stable, not perfect, but stable. Sarah took the credit, of course. At the launch party, which she threw at a rooftop bar in the Mission District, she held court with the Orion executives. She laughed, she touched arms, she charmed. It was a challenge, I heard her telling the Orion CEO, but I told my team, we don't accept failure. I had to really push them, you know? Sometimes you have to crack the whip to get the creative juices flowing. I stood in the corner, nursing a seltzer water. I was too exhausted to drink alcohol. Marcus was next to me. He looked like he wanted to throw Sarah off the roof. She's telling them she wrote the strategy, Marcus growled. She doesn't even know what an SQL injection is. Let her have the win, Marcus said. though the words tasted like ash. The company survives. That's what matters. Does it? Marcus looked at me. The culture is dead, Elena. Priya in sales, she's updating her LinkedIn. 3 of my senior devs have interviews at Google next week. They hate her, and they're starting to wonder why you're letting her run the show. I'm not letting her. You are, he cut me off. You're the CEO, but she's the one giving orders. Fix it, or there won't be a Nexus left to save. I went home that night resolved to end this. I was going to fire Sarah. Family or not, she was a cancer to the organization. I had the founder authority, or so I thought. The next morning, I logged into the executive admin portal to draft the termination notice for Sarah. Access denied. I frowned. I typed my password again. Access denied. Contact administrator. I was the administrator. I called IT. Hey, Kevin, my admin login isn't working. There was a long pause on the other end. Hey, Elena. Yeah, I've been instructed to update the security protocols. Instructed by whom? By the board. My blood ran cold. The board? You mean my father? Yeah, and Sarah. They instituted a new dual control policy for executive actions. You can't access HR files or high-level financial data without a countersign from the chairman. Kevin, I said, my voice trembling, unlock my account now. I can't, Elena, I'm sorry. They said if I override it, I'm fired for cause. I hung up. I sat in my chair, staring at the black screen. They had neutered me. They knew I was going to make a move, and they struck first. It was a soft coup. I drove to my parents' house that afternoon. I didn't call first. Mom was in the garden, pruning roses. Dad was in his study reading the Wall Street Journal. We need to talk, I said, slamming my laptop onto his desk. Hello to you too, Elena, he said, not looking up. Why am I locked out of my own company's HR system? He took off his reading glasses and sighed. We anticipated you might be emotional after the Orion project. You looked burnt out. We wanted to prevent any rash decisions. Rash decisions? Sarah is destroying the culture. My CTO is about to quit. The engineers are on the verge of mutiny. Sarah delivered Orion. She brought in $50 million. You were complaining about overtime. She got results. That's leadership. She nearly killed the staff to do it. And they did it, he countered. Elena, you're soft. You treat these employees like friends. Sarah treats them like assets. That is why she is the future. He stood up and walked over to a sideboard, pouring himself a drink. We're holding a special meeting next week, he said, his back to me, to discuss the restructuring. Restructuring? Yes. We think it's time to formalize the hierarchy. You're a builder, Elena. You're not a wartime general. Sarah is. I looked at him, the man who taught me to ride a bike, the man I had idolized, and I felt something snap inside me. It wasn't a loud snap. It was quiet, like a wire cutting through bone. I see, I said. I didn't yell. I didn't scream. I just turned around and walked out.
That brings us back to the dinner. The celebration dinner where they officially asked me to step down. After I left that dinner, I didn't go home. I couldn't bear the thought of my empty apartment. I drove up to Twin Peaks, the overlook that views the entire city of San Francisco. I sat on the hood of my car, shivering in the cold wind, looking down at the lights. Somewhere down there was the Nexus office. My lights were probably still on. Marcus was probably still there. I cried. I'm not ashamed to admit it. I sobbed until my chest ached. I mourned the loss of my company. I mourned the loss of my family. I mourned the 10 years of my youth I had thrown into a black hole. But as the tears dried, a cold clarity replaced them. They thought I was weak. They thought I was soft because I cared about my people. They thought business was just numbers and contracts and bullying. They forgot what I actually was. I wasn't just a CEO. I was a hacker. I was a coder. I knew how systems worked. I knew that every system had a back door. Every fortress had a thermal exhaust port. They wanted the building? Fine. They could have the building. They wanted the brand? Fine. They could have the logo. But a tech company isn't the building or the logo. It's the people and the product. If they wanted Nexus, they were going to get exactly what they paid for, a shell. I wiped my face. I got back in my car. I didn't play sad music. I turned the radio off. I had work to do.
I returned to the office the next day, playing the part of the defeated daughter. I walked into Sarah's office, my old office. She had already moved my things into boxes and stacked them in the hallway. "Oh, hey-o," she said, not looking up from her phone. "Sorry about the boxes. I needed the shelf space for my awards." "It's fine," I said, keeping my head down. "Dad's right. I am tired. I think I'm ready to step back." Sarah looked up, surprised. Then she smiled. "I knew you'd come around. It's for the best, really. You'll still be on the board. You can come to the holiday parties." "Yeah, I just need a few weeks to offload my files, transition the technical documentation to Marcus, hand over the client keys." "Take your time," she waved a hand dismissively. "Just make sure the transition is clean. I don't want any loose ends." "It will be very clean," I promised. I went to my new office, a converted storage closet near the server room. It was humiliating, but it was perfect. It was invisible. I started my audit. I needed to know exactly what I could take without getting sued into oblivion. I pulled up my employment contract. I pulled up the employee handbooks. I pulled up the client service agreements. I spent 3 days reading fine print. And then I found it. The golden ticket. Back when I started Nexus, I was young and paranoid about big corporations buying us out and firing me. So I had insisted on a specific clause in our Master Service Agreements, MSA, for our Tier 1 clients. Clause 14.B, the key person provision. In the event that Elena Vance is no longer the active CEO or directly overseeing the account strategy, the client reserves the right to terminate this agreement immediately without penalty, regardless of the remaining contract duration. My father hated that clause. He called it vanity. But the clients loved it. They trusted me, not a faceless corporation. They signed it because they wanted assurance that I would always be the one picking up the phone. Sarah hadn't read the old contracts. She only cared about the new ones. I checked the list. 18 of our top 20 clients, representing 80% of our recurring revenue, were on the old MSA. If I left, they were legally free to leave with me. Next, I looked at the employee contracts. California is a right-to-work state. Non-compete clauses are notoriously difficult to enforce here. But Dad had tried. He had made everyone sign a scary-looking non-compete clause banning them from working for a direct competitor for 2 years. However, there was a loophole. The non-compete was void if the employee was terminated without cause or subjected to constructive dismissal, which means making the workplace so hostile that the employee is forced to quit. Sarah's behavior over the last 6 months, the overtime, the verbal abuse, the impossible deadlines, it was a textbook case of constructive dismissal. I smiled for the first time in weeks. I had the legal avenue. Now I needed the army. I couldn't just mass email the staff. IT and Sarah would see it. I had to do this the old-fashioned way. I opened my drawer and took out a stack of Post-it notes. I wrote a single name on the first one. Marcus. It was time to go fishing.
I couldn't risk being seen with Marcus. Sarah had eyes everywhere now, her little army of consultants who roamed the halls like hall monitors, reporting any sedition back to her. So I sent Marcus a message on Signal, the encrypted messaging app. Blue Bottle Coffee, the one on Hayes, 7 p.m. Come alone, don't wear your badge. I got there early. I sat in the back corner wearing a hoodie and sunglasses like some celebrity trying to avoid paparazzi. It felt ridiculous, but the stakes were too high. Marcus walked in at 7:05. He looked awful. Dark circles under his eyes, his shoulders slumped. He spotted me, bought a black coffee, and slid into the booth opposite me. "This is weird, Elle," he said, keeping his voice low. "Why the cloak and dagger?" I asked, "How was your day?" He laughed, a dry, humorless sound. "Sarah tried to explain blockchain to the dev team today. She used the word synergy 4 times. Then she told us we needed to refactor the mainframe. We don't have a mainframe, Elena. We run on AWS cloud instances." I winced. "I'm sorry." "Don't be sorry. Be angry. She's running us into the ground. 2 of the senior back-end guys put in their notice today. They'd rather be unemployed than listen to her tell them how to code." I leaned in. "What if they didn't have to be unemployed?" Marcus frowned. "What do you mean?" I pulled a folded piece of paper from my pocket. It wasn't a contract. It was a manifesto. Or a business plan, depending on how you looked at it. "I'm starting a new company," I whispered. "Aura Systems." Marcus picked up the paper. He scanned the bullet points. Same tech stack, better architecture, no legacy debt, and fully remote? "We go back to basics," I said. "No consultants, no board of directors, no family politics. Just the code. Just us." "And the money?" he asked. "Startups burn cash. You know that better than anyone." "I have savings. Enough to pay everyone's current salary for 6 months. No equity cuts. Plus, everyone gets double the stock options in the new entity." Marcus looked at me. The fatigue in his eyes was replaced by a spark, the same spark I saw when I interviewed him 5 years ago. "Who else?" he asked. "I need the core team, the people who actually build the product, not the middle managers, the builders." "I can get the back-end team," Marcus said without hesitation. "They'd follow me into a volcano if it meant getting away from Sarah." "What about sales? A product is useless if nobody sells it." "Leave Priya to me," I said. Marcus extended his hand across the table. "I'm in. When do we launch?" "Friday. The transition meeting. We burn the ships."
Priya was harder. She was my head of sales, a shark in a Prada suit. She was money-motivated, practical, and ruthlessly efficient. She didn't care about code. She cared about commissions. I invited her to a wine bar in Marin, far away from the prying eyes of the tech district. "I heard you're stepping down," Priya said, swirling her Pinot Noir. "Rumor is it wasn't voluntary?" "The rumor is correct," I admitted. "Sarah is a lot," Priya said diplomatically. "She has energy, but she keeps trying to change the pitch deck. She wants to add more buzzwords. Clients hate buzzwords, Elena. They want solutions." "I know." "So what's the plan? You going to retire? Sip margaritas in Cabo?" "I'm taking the clients, Priya." Priya froze. She put her glass down. "Excuse me?" "I'm taking them," I repeated calmly. "Or rather, they are coming with me." I slid a copy of the old master service agreement across the table. I had highlighted clause 14.b in neon yellow. Priya read it. Her eyes widened. She looked up at me, then back at the paper. A slow smile spread across her face. "The key person clause," she whispered. "I remember this.
Your dad hated this. He did, but he signed off on it because he was desperate for the revenue back then. Does Sarah know? Sarah thinks due diligence is a type of cocktail, I said. Priya laughed. It was a genuine belly laugh. Oh my God, you're going to gut the revenue. 18 of the top 20 clients. I've already had back-channel conversations with 3 of them. The CTO at Logicorp, he told me he's only staying because of our relationship. If I leave, he walks. If I start something new, he signs with me day 1. And the commissions? Priya asked, her eyes sharp. Same base, higher commission cap, and you get to be co-founder and CRO of the new entity. No glass ceiling, no Sarah telling you how to dress for client meetings. Priya picked up her glass and downed the rest of the wine in one gulp. Where do I sign?
The week leading up to the Friday meeting was a masterclass in acting. I spent my days in the office being helpful, overly helpful. Elena, do we have the documentation for the server architecture? Sarah asked me on Wednesday. She was standing in my doorway, holding a latte, looking stressed but trying to hide it. Of course, I said sweetly. I'm compiling it all on the shared drive under transition_docs. I wasn't lying. I was compiling it, but I was doing it in a way that would be completely indecipherable to anyone who hadn't built the system. I wrote the documentation in raw technical shorthand. I referenced libraries that were deprecated. I didn't include the why, only the what. For example, I wrote, to recirc the shard cluster, execute Protocol 7. I didn't write down what Protocol 7 was or where the script was located. It was on a local machine that I was taking with me. It was malicious compliance. I was giving her exactly what she asked for, data, but without the context to make it useful. Meanwhile, Sarah was planning her coronation. She had ordered a massive new leadership banner to be hung in the atrium. She had hired Haterer for a new era party on Friday afternoon. She was so focused on the party, she didn't notice the silence in the engineering bay. The engineers weren't typing as much. They were backing up their personal files. They were cleaning out their desks. Why is everyone taking their plants home? Sarah asked me as we walked through the bullpen. Oh, I think there's a bug infestation, a fungus gnats, very common this time of year. They want to treat them at home so they don't infect the office. Ew, she wrinkled her nose. Well, tell them to hurry up. I want the office looking pristine for the party. I'll tell them, I said. Thursday night, the night before the end. I was in my apartment, which had turned into the temporary headquarters of Aura Systems. My living room was filled with paperwork. Incorporation documents, leases for a small WeWork space in Oakland, much cheaper than SF, offer letters. Marcus sat on my floor, his laptop open. We have the commitments, 15 engineers, 3 designers, the entire DevOps team, and Priya secured the sales team. That's nearly 40 people, I said, looking at the list. It's more than I thought. People want to work for you, Elena, not a logo. What about the non-competes? Priya asked from the kitchen where she was making coffee. I had my lawyer review them. Because Sarah created a hostile work environment, and we have the emails to prove it, the non-competes are toothless. Plus, California law just passed a new statute strengthening employee mobility. If Dad tries to sue, he'll spend more on legal fees than the employees are worth. He will sue, Priya warned. Robert doesn't lose gracefully. Let him sue, I said, feeling a cold resolve. By the time he gets a court date, we'll have his clients. My phone buzzed. It was a text for Mom. Make sure you wear something nice tomorrow, Elena. We're taking photos for the press release. Try not to look too sullen. We want to show a united front. I stared at the screen. A united front. As if they hadn't stabbed me in the back. I typed back, Don't worry, Mom. It will be a day to remember. Friday morning arrived with a heavy gray fog, typical for San Francisco. I dressed carefully.
I didn't wear the defeated daughter clothes I had been wearing all week. I wore my founder suit, a sharp, tailored black blazer, stilettos that clicked like gunshots on the pavement. I put on red lipstick. I walked into the Nexus building for the last time. The atrium was decorated with balloons, silver and gold, Sarah's colors. There was a giant banner, Nexus 2.0, the future is female. The irony was suffocating. I took the elevator up to the executive floor. The mood was eerie. The staff, the ones who were in on the plan, looked at me with a mixture of fear and excitement. There were nods, small smiles. It felt like a heist movie. We were about to rob the bank, but the bank was our own intellectual property. I walked into the boardroom. My parents were already there. Dad looked smug. Mom looked anxious, arranging a fruit platter. Sarah was at the head of the table, checking her reflection in her phone. The board members, mostly Dad's cronies, were dialed in via Zoom on the big screen. "Ah, Elena," Dad said, checking his watch. "You're on time. Good." "I wouldn't miss this," I said, taking the seat at the far end of the table, the seat farthest from power. "So," Sarah began, clapping her hands, "agenda for today. First, we formally accept Elena's transition to the advisory board. Second, I unveiled the Q4 strategy. Third, we go downstairs and drink champagne." She laughed. Dad laughed. The board members on the screen chuckled. "Before we start," I said, standing up. My hands were shaking, but I placed them flat on the table to study them. "Can't it wait, Elena?" Mom sighed. "We're on a schedule." "No," I said. "It can't wait." I opened my briefcase. I pulled out a stack of envelopes. Not one or two, 40. I placed them on the table. The sound of the heavy paper hitting the mahogany echoed in the silent room. "What is this?" Sarah asked, her smile faltering. "These," I said, my voice ringing clear and strong, "are the resignation letters of myself, Marcus, Priya, and 37 other employees." Silence. Absolute, deafening silence. Dad's face went from smug to confused. "Resignation? You can't resign. We're transitioning you." "I am declining the transition," I said. "I am resigning, effective immediately." "And the others?" Sarah asked, her voice high and shrill. "Why do you have their letters?" "Because they asked me to deliver them," I said. "They've already packed their desks. They are walking out of the building as we speak." "You poacher!" Dad roared, slamming his fist on the table. "You solicited them. That's a violation of your fiduciary duty." "Actually," I said, cool as ice, "I didn't solicit anyone. I simply announced I was starting a new venture, and they volunteered. People are free to choose where they work, Dad. It's the free market. Isn't that what you always taught me?" "I'll sue you," he shouted, standing up, his face turning purple. "I'll bury you in litigation for the next 10 years. "You could," I said, cool as ice, "but you might want to save your money." I pulled out the second stack of papers, the client termination notices. "Because," I continued, "as of 9 a.m. this morning, 18 of your top clients have invoked Clause 14B of their master service agreements. They are terminating their contracts with Nexus due to the departure of key personnel, specifically me." Sarah grabbed the papers. Her hands were shaking so hard she tore one of them. She scanned the text. "Logicorp," she whispered. "Orion. Blue Sky? Elena, this is everything. This is 80% of the revenue." "It was," I corrected. "Now it's 0%. "You can't do this," Sarah screamed. She looked like a child who had dropped her ice cream. "This is my company. Mommy, tell her." Mom looked at me, eyes wide with horror. "Elena, stop this immediately. You are ruining your sister's big day." "She wanted the title, Mom," I said, feeling a tear slide down my cheek, not of sadness, but of release. "She wanted the title. She has the seat. She has the building. She has the furniture. She has the balloons." I picked up my purse. "But she doesn't have the business, because the business was me." I turned to the Zoom screen. "Gentlemen of the board," I said,
I suggest you sell your shares. Nexus is about to become a penny stock. I walked to the door. Elena, Dad yelled, if you walk out that door, you are dead to this family. I stopped. I looked back at them, the 3 people who had used me, drained me, and discarded me. I was dead to you the moment I stopped making you money, I said. Goodbye. I walked out. I walked down the hall. The office was empty. The new era party decorations were hanging limply. The silence was beautiful. I took the elevator down to the lobby. I walked out the front doors. Standing on the sidewalk were 40 people. Marcus, Priya, the engineers, the designers. They were holding boxes of their personal belongings. When they saw me, they didn't cheer, they didn't clap. They just smiled. Ready, boss? Marcus asked. I looked at the Nexus building one last time. Then I looked at my team. Ready, I said. Let's go build something real.
I didn't look back as I walked away from the Nexus building, but Marcus told me later what happened. Apparently, the silence lasted for a full minute after the elevator doors closed on me. Then, chaos erupted. My father was screaming into his phone, calling his expensive lawyers. My mother was crying, picking up the torn pieces of paper from the floor. And Sarah? Sarah sat in the CEO chair, staring at the empty Zoom screen where the board members had abruptly logged off to call their brokers. She tried to regain control. She marched out to the bullpen, ready to rally the troops. "All right, everyone," she shouted, clapping her hands. "We have some vacancies to fill. I want everyone to call their networks. We are going to hire better people, people who are loyal." But she was shouting at an empty room. The desks were cleared. The monitors were dark. The only thing left was a single cactus on a junior developer's desk and the Nexus 2.0 balloons bobbing listlessly in the air conditioning. There was no one left to call. The only people remaining were the HR manager, who was legally obligated to stay for now, 2 interns who looked terrified, and the janitorial staff. Sarah ran back to her office to log into the recruitment portal. She typed in her password. System error. Database corrupted. She tried to access the client list to do damage control. System error. Encryption key missing. I hadn't deleted the data. That would be illegal. But I had encrypted it using a rotating key that only the CTO possessed, and the CTO was currently sitting in the passenger seat of my car eating a breakfast burrito. Sarah picked up her desk phone to call IT support. It rang, and then she remembered she had fired the external IT vendor last month to save money, claiming the internal team could handle it. The internal team that was currently driving across the Bay Bridge with me. She was the captain of a ship, but she had no crew, no rudder, and the engine room was on fire. The garage phase redux. While Nexus was imploding, Aura Systems was being born. We didn't have a glass skyscraper. We rented a cramped, windowless office in a co-working space in Oakland. It smelled like stale popcorn and ozone. The internet was spotty. We sat on cheap folding chairs. But the energy was electric. "All right, people," I said, standing on a crate because we didn't have a podium. "We have 18 clients coming over on Monday. We need to rebuild the infrastructure from scratch. We can't use a single line of Nexus code. That's intellectual property theft. We have to write it fresh." "Fresh is good," Marcus said, cracking his knuckles. "The old code was spaghetti. I've been dying to rewrite the API in Rust anyway." "You have 72 hours. Can we do it?" The team looked at each other. They were tired. They were taking a massive risk, but they smiled. "Hold my Red Bull," Jenna, the lead designer, said. For 3 days, nobody went home. We ordered pizza, we slept on bean bags. It felt just like the old days in my dad's garage, but without the toxic pressure of my family looming over us. We laughed, we played music, and we coded like our lives depended on it, because they did. I was burning through my personal savings at a terrifying rate. I had enough cash to pay payroll for 2 months. If the clients didn't sign the new contracts and pay their retainers immediately, we were dead in the water. My phone rang constantly. Unknown numbers, my parents, Sarah. I didn't answer. I sent everything to voicemail. "Elena, this is your mother. Pick up. You are being childish. This is Robert. My lawyers are drafting a temporary restraining order. You will be in handcuffs by noon. Elena, please. The server is making a beeping noise. What does the red light mean? That one was Sarah.
On Monday morning, a process server walked into our co-working space. "Elena Vance?" he asked. "That's me." He handed me a thick envelope. "You've been served." It was a lawsuit. Nexus Technologies versus Aura Systems, Elena Vance et al. They were suing for breach of fiduciary duty, theft of trade secrets, tortious interference, and about 10 other things. They were also seeking an emergency injunction to shut us down. My heart hammered in my chest. Even though I knew I was in the right, the weight of the legal system is terrifying. I called my lawyer, a sharp-witted woman named Karen, who specialized in startup disputes. "Don't worry," Karen said over the phone. "This is a SLAP suit, strategic lawsuit against public participation. They're trying to scare you. The judge isn't going to grant an injunction based on trade secrets, when the secret is just the talent in people's heads. California Business and Professions Code Section 16600 is your best friend." "But the legal fees," I worried. "We'll countersue for unpaid wages and hostile work environment," Karen said. "And we'll ask for legal fees to be covered. Just keep building, Elena. Let me fight the sharks." The injunction hearing was set for Wednesday. I showed up to the courthouse. My father was there, flanked by 3 suits. He wouldn't look at me. Sarah was there, looking pale and having clearly lost weight. She shot daggers at me. The judge, a no-nonsense woman in her 60s, read the filing. "Mr. Vance," the judge said, peering over her glasses, "you are claiming that Ms. Vance stole proprietary algorithms?" "She did, Your Honor," Dad blustered. "The code is gone." "The code isn't gone," my lawyer interjected. "The code is on their servers. They just don't know how to operate it because they fired or drove away everyone who did." "Is this true, Sarah?" the judge asked. "Is the data physically on your servers?" "Well, yes," she stammered. "But it's encrypted, and she won't give us the password." "Did you fire the CTO who had the password?" "He resigned." "After you demoted him and cut his budget," my lawyer added. The judge sighed. "This sounds like an internal management failure, not corporate espionage. Injunction denied. The lawsuit can proceed to discovery, but I am not shutting down Aura Systems. Next case." Dad looked like he was going to have a stroke. I walked out of the courtroom. Dad cornered me in the hallway. "You think you've won?" he hissed. "I have millions in reserve, Elena. I will bleed you dry in court fees. You'll be bankrupt before you ever see a profit." "Maybe," I said, buttoning my coat. "How's the Orion contract going, Dad? I heard they have a strict uptime penalty." His face went white. I knew I hit a nerve. The Orion contract. The government deal Sarah had fought so hard for. If the system went down for more than 4 hours, the penalty was $10,000 per hour. "Goodbye, Dad." The crash. It happened on a Thursday. We had just deployed the beta version of the Aura platform. Our clients were migrating over. It was smooth. At Nexus, however, it was the apocalypse. Since the engineering team was gone, the automated maintenance scripts, which Marcus used to run manually every Thursday, didn't run. The database logs filled up, the hard drives hit 100% capacity, and then the servers crashed. Not just a glitch, a hard crash. The Nexus platform went dark, globally. Thousands of trucks stopped moving. Warehouses couldn't print shipping labels. The supply chain for 18 major companies ground to a halt. But wait, those 18 companies had already switched to Aura.
So their trucks kept moving. The only clients left on Nexus were the bottom 20%, the smaller accounts that hadn't switched yet, and Orion. Orion hadn't switched because government contracts are slow to move. They were still legally bound to Nexus for another month. At 2 p.m., my phone rang. It was a number I didn't recognize. "This is Elena?" "Ms. Vance, this is General Miller from Orion." I sat up straighter. "General, how can I help you?" "My dashboard is black," he barked. "I have vital supply drops scheduled for overseas bases, and I can't track them. I called your support line, and it says mailbox full. I called your CEO, Sarah, and she's crying. Literally crying. Tell me what is going on." "General, I don't work at Nexus anymore. I resigned last week." "I don't care about your HR drama," he shouted. "I care about my logistics. Can you fix it?" "I can't fix Nexus, sir. I don't have access. However," I looked at Marcus, who was typing furiously, "Aura Systems is fully operational. We have a mirror of the public logistical data. If you authorize an emergency vendor switch, I can have your dashboard live on our platform in—" "Marcus?" Marcus held up 2 fingers. "2 hours, General." There was a silence on the line. Then, "Send the contract. I'll sign it now." 10 minutes after Orion signed with Aura, my phone rang again. It was Sarah. I let it ring. It rang again. And again. Finally, I picked up. "What do you want, Sarah?" "Elena, please!" She was hysterical. I could hear alarms beeping in the background. "The system is down. Everything is down. Orion just sent a termination notice for failure to perform. They're invoking the penalty clause. That's $2 million, Elena. We don't have that kind of liquidity." "That sounds like a CEO problem," I said coldly. "You know the codes. You know how to clear the logs. Just come in, please. I'll pay you. I'll pay you whatever you want." "You want to hire me as a consultant?" I asked. Yes, name your price." I looked around my cramped office. I looked at my team, exhausted but triumphant. And I looked at the monitor showing the Orion dashboard coming online, green lights flickering across the map. "My rate is $5 million, I said. "That's extortion." "That's the market rate for saving your company from bankruptcy," I said. "Take it or leave it." "I can't pay that. Dad will kill me." "Then ask Dad to fix the server." "Elena, please! We're family!" "No, Sarah," I said, my voice dropping to a whisper. "We're competitors." I hung up. 30 seconds later, Dad called. "You ungrateful, spiteful little—" I hung up on him too. Then I turned off my phone. "Marcus," I said, "is Orion online?" "Green across the board. We just processed their first shipment." "Good," I said. "Let's order Thai food. It's going to be a long night." We celebrated with pad Thai and cheap beer, while across town, the lights at Nexus burned late into the night, illuminating a sinking ship.
The death spiral. The next month was a blur of victory and vengeance. Without the Orion contract, Nexus's cash flow evaporated. The penalties from the downtime drained their reserves. The remaining clients, seeing the disaster, invoked their own termination clauses, citing service instability. Sarah tried to hire a crisis management firm. They charged her $50,000 a week to tell her what everyone already knew. The company was dead without its talent. They tried to hire freelance engineers to fix the code, but Marcus had written the core architecture in a very specific, custom framework. The freelancers looked at it and scratched their heads. It would take them months to reverse engineer it. Nexus didn't have months. They had weeks. Meanwhile, Aura Systems was thriving. We weren't rich yet. We were reinvesting every penny into growth, but we were stable. We moved out of the WeWork and into a proper office. It wasn't a glass skyscraper, but it had windows and good coffee. I created an employee stock ownership plan, ESOP. I gave 20% of the company to the employees. We voted on major decisions. It was the company I had always wanted to build before my parents got their claws into it. One raining Tuesday, I got a notification on my phone. LinkedIn alert. Sarah Vance has updated her profile. I clicked on it. Sarah Vance, former CEO at Nexus Technologies. Open to work. I checked the news. Breaking. Nexus Technologies files for Chapter 11. Bankruptcy. Assets to be liquidated. I felt a strange cocktail of emotions. Relief, sadness, but mostly closure. I hadn't destroyed them. I had just removed the pillar holding up the roof. The gravity of their own incompetence did the rest. I thought it was over, but the final act was yet to come. My parents weren't done with me yet.
The vulture. Bankruptcy is a slow, ugly process. But liquidation? Liquidation is fast. 3 months after the crash, the court-appointed trustee for Nexus Technologies announced a sealed bid auction for the company's remaining assets. This included the office furniture, the servers, the domain name, and, most importantly, the intellectual property rights to the original Nexus code and the patents. I sat in my new office at Aura. We had just moved into a converted warehouse in the Dogpatch district. It was open, airy, and filled with light. "Are you going to bid?" Marcus asked, leaning against my doorframe. "Why would I?" I asked, not looking up from my screen. "We built a better platform. Why would I want the old junk?" "Because of the patents," Marcus said. "If a patent troll buys them, they could sue us for infringement. Plus, it's your baby, Elle. You wrote that kernel." He was right. The code was obsolete, but the rights to it were dangerous in the wrong hands. And sentimentally, it was my life's work. "How much do they want?" "It's a fire sale," Marcus shrugged. "Debts are massive. They just want quick cash to pay off the secured creditors. Dad loses everything, obviously. Equity holders get wiped out." "Okay," I said. "Call our lawyer, set up a shell company, Phoenix Holdings." "Why a shell company?" "Because if my father knows I'm the buyer, he'll sabotage the deal out of spite. I want to buy it anonymously." We put in our bid. It was insultingly low. $250,000 for the entire IP portfolio, a portfolio that was valued at $50 million 6 months ago. 2 days later, the trustee called. "Congratulations, Phoenix Holdings. You are the proud owner of Nexus Technologies' IP assets." I signed the papers, I wired the money, and just like that, I owned it all. I owned the code, I owned the brand, I owned the logo, and I had bought it for the price of a used Ferrari. Chapter 22. The Last Supper. A week later, I got a text from my mother. "We are packing up the Napa house. We have to be out by Friday. Please come. There are boxes of your childhood things in the attic." I debated not going, but I needed closure. I drove up on a Thursday afternoon. The Napa house, the sprawling estate I had bought for them as a thank you gift, looked sad. The lawn was overgrown. A "for sale, bank-owned" sign was planted in the driveway. I walked in. The house was filled with cardboard boxes. My parents were in the living room. They looked 10 years older. My father, usually impeccably dressed in suits, was wearing sweatpants and a stained polo shirt. He was drinking scotch at 2 p.m. Sarah was there too. She was folding clothes into a box. She looked tired. Her hair was pulled back in a messy bun, no makeup. The golden child shine was gone. "You came," Mom said. Her voice was brittle. "I came for my things," I said, staying near the door. "Is that all?" Dad grunted, swirling his glass. "Did you come to gloat?" "I don't need to gloat, Dad. The for sale sign does that for me." "It didn't have to be this way," Sarah said, standing up. "You could have helped us. You could have fixed the servers. And you could have not stolen my company," I shot back. "We all make choices, Sarah.
"We didn't steal it," Dad yelled, though it lacked his usual fire. "We were trying to secure the family legacy. We thought you were burning out." "No," I said calmly. "You thought I was a workhorse. You thought you could put the show pony in charge and the wagon would keep pulling itself. You forgot that I was the one pulling the wagon." "We're broke, Elena," Mom whispered, sitting down on a box. She started to cry. "The lawyers took everything. The bank took the house. We have to move into a 2-bedroom condo in Sacramento." To my mother, moving to Sacramento was a fate worse than death. "I'm sorry to hear that," I said. And strangely, I meant it. I didn't hate them anymore. I just felt pity. They were small people who had tried to play a big game. "Can you—" Dad cleared his throat. He looked down at his shoes. "Can you help us? Just a loan until I get back on my feet? I have some ideas for a consulting firm." I looked at him. The man who called me soft. The man who sued me. The man who tried to destroy my reputation. "No," I said. His head snapped up. "What?" "No." "No loan," I said. "I'm not enabling you anymore. You were a businessman, Dad. You know the risks. Sometimes you win. Sometimes you lose. You lost." "We're your family," Mom wailed. "I have a family," I said, thinking of Marcus, of Priya, of the team back in the dog patch. "I have people who respect me, people who have my back. That's family." I walked to the attic. I grabbed a single box, my old yearbooks, some photos, a trophy from a coding competition I won in high school. I walked back downstairs. "Elena, wait," Sarah said. She followed me to the door. I stopped. "What?" She looked at me, her eyes red. "Did you buy the IP?" I paused. "How did you know?" "The trustee said it was a shell company, Phoenix Holdings. That sounds like you. Rising from the ashes." I nodded. "Yes, I bought it." "What are you going to do with it?" "Nothing. I'm going to put it in a digital vault and let it rot. It's a relic. Just like this house." Sarah let out a laugh, a bitter, hollow sound. "You won, Elle. You took everything." "I didn't take anything, Sarah. I just took back what was mine. You're young. You have an MBA. Go get a job. Start at the bottom. Learn to code. Maybe in 10 years, you'll understand why I did what I did." I got in the car. I watched them in the rearview mirror as I drove away. 3 small figures standing in the shadow of a foreclosed mansion. I didn't feel triumph. I felt light. The weight was finally gone.
1 year later. Aura Systems went public 18 months after the Great Exodus. The IPO was massive. We were oversubscribed by 300%. On opening day, the stock soared. I stood on the balcony of the New York Stock Exchange, ringing the opening bell. Marcus was on my left, Priya was on my right. My team, my real family, was cheering on the floor below. I wasn't just a millionaire anymore. I was a billionaire. But that wasn't the best part. The best part was the culture we had built. We had strict no-asshole policies. We paid overtime. We had mandatory vacation days. We proved that you could build a unicorn without eating your young. I checked my phone during the celebration lunch. I had an email from a recruiter. Subject: Applicant inquiry. Reference check. Candidate: Elena Vance. Position: Junior Marketing Coordinator. I smiled. She was taking my advice. She was starting at the bottom. I hit reply. Sarah is a capable individual with a lot to learn. If she is willing to do the work, give her a shot. Elena Vance, CEO, Aura Systems. I put the phone away. Marcus raised a glass of champagne. To the ones who stayed, he said. To the builders, Priya added. I clinked my glass against theirs. To the code. Chapter 24. Epilogue. People ask me if I regret what I did. If I regret bankrupting my parents and humiliating my sister. They say blood is thicker than water. Maybe that's true, but in the tech world, we have a different saying. Garbage in, garbage out. If you put toxicity into a system, the system fails. I just debugged the system. My parents are living in Sacramento. Dad is trying to sell life insurance. Mom complains about the heat. We talk on Christmas, briefly. It's polite, distant. My sister is working at a mid-sized ad agency. She's doing okay. We text sometimes. She sent me a congratulations card when Aura went public. It simply said, "You were right." I kept that card. I look out the window of my office. The San Francisco fog is rolling in, hugging the Golden Gate Bridge. The city is alive, buzzing with ideas, with ambition, with the next generation of builders. I turn back to my computer. I open a terminal window. The cursor blinks, a steady, rhythmic heartbeat. I start typing. There's always new code to write.